Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of News 2. I'm Sandra Guman-Singh. Topping our newscast, one man is dead after being shot in a St. Croix housing community Monday. Police are investigating the incident that took place late in the afternoon at the D. Hamilton Jackson apartment homes. VIPD officials don't know if this incident is related to the violence a few weeks ago, but they want to assure the community that steps are being taken to keep the public safe. News 2's Erica Parsons has more.
A 28-year-old St. Croix man was gunned down Monday afternoon.
The 911 call center received a call of a discharge and a shot initially. Shortly after 5, shortly after they received that call, they received a second call indicating that there was a male individual laying on the ground in the D. Hamilton Jackson housing community area.
Police say Ali Benjamin was still alive when first responders arrived and EMTs began treating his injuries. He was transported to the hospital but died of those injuries. Benjamin didn't live in the area.
As far as we know, he was not a resident of that community.
Officials are still investigating the case, so they don't know if there's any link between this incident and the bloody weekend a few weeks ago. Since then, and even before, VIPD has executed a few crime-fighting initiatives.
We've had several initiatives that we've embarked upon, which has been very successful. Just the mere fact that we have embarked upon initiatives has brought a calm to the community. But one of the things that I'm very concerned about is that individuals are not coming out and they're not telling us what's happening. And so that's where we have that void that we're working on.
Police have also been patrolling on foot to rebuild trust in the communities.
The officers are actually out in the housing community, not just driving through them, but actually walking and talking with the community. I think that's another way that is going to help us. It's one of the ways that's going to bring that communication network between the police department and the community back together.
Erica Parsons, News 2.
Now, Benjamin's death is the 10th homicide on St. Croix in the territory's 26th since the beginning of the year. Meanwhile, police say on Sunday, September 27th at 8:13 p.m., officers received notification from the 911 emergency call center of a robbery that occurred in the area of Mongoose Junction. The victim stated she'd been robbed at gunpoint at roughly 8:08 p.m. as she and a friend were sitting on a wall adjacent to the Asolea restaurant, enjoying the view of the full moon on St. John, when they were approached by two black men wearing dark clothing with their faces covered by white cloths. One of the men held a handgun against her and repeatedly demanded that she turned over her bag, mobile phone, and camera. The men left the two women unharmed as they fled the area in a dark gray-colored Jeep. On Monday, September 28 at 5 a.m., officers received notification from the 911 emergency call center of a burglary that occurred at the Tutu Park Mall. Staff members of the Best Laundromat said the suspects gained entry into their facility by using an exterior door, which led into a storeroom, and they took an undetermined amount of money. The suspects then used the roof inside to gain access into the actual mall. Police say the suspects then used an unknown tool to damage the entrance gate to Champs. And once inside, they stole several $1,000s worth of merchandise. Call 911 or Crime Stoppers USVI at 1-800-222-TIPS 8477 if you have any information on these investigations. The clock is ticking on the health insurance package for government employees, but lawmakers said they were given the details of the package too late. With the deadline looming just a couple of days away, senators met with government officials and insurance companies to discuss the immediate future of government health insurance. News 2's April Knight has that story.
Lawmakers are scrambling for solutions so that government employees don't have to take out extra dollars out of their paycheck under the renewal of the government's insurance plan. On Tuesday, the Senate Committee of the Whole heard from GESC and Cigna representatives on the new health insurance plan that must take effect on Thursday in order for government employees not to have a lapse of coverage. The current plan expires on Wednesday.
Lawmakers are upset
upset that they have less than 48 hours to review an all-encompassing medical insurance contract that affects government employees, retirees, and dependents across the board. They say at the end of the day, they really have no choice.
Because at the end of the day, if we don't vote it up, we jeopardize the health care of the people of the Virgin Islands.
Have you heard the frustration of the members here with respect to this deadline, proverbial gun at our heads, dealing with something as critical as this? Have you heard it today?
The new health insurance contract would cost government employees 3.3% of the current plan, or $1.8 million altogether. That translates to an additional $3 per paycheck for singles and $4 for families. Seemingly minimal cost increases that do add up in the long run.
It's been great that they have come up with some recommendations that I hope that they follow through on, because right now things are tough for all of the employees, and that little bit does make a difference.
Lawmakers suggested finding the $1.8 million so government employees' rates don't go up at all, but even that suggestion could run into some red tape. If the insurance contract is not signed by Thursday, there is no grace period, and government employees could lose their health coverage. Reporting for News 2, I'm April Knight.
Meanwhile, the Virgin Islands government has given out $44 million in tax refunds so far this year, but there's more good news for taxpayers who are still waiting. The government announced Monday that another batch of tax refunds will be released before the week is out. News 2's April Knight has details.
Millions more in tax refunds are on their way to taxpayers' hands. Government House announced earlier this week that $16 million will be released in the next day or so. The MAP administration has drawn attention to the several releases of tax refund monies since the beginning of the year. According to Finance Commissioner Collins, the $16 million in tax refunds should be disbursed by Wednesday, September 30th. That brings the total of tax refunds released so far in fiscal year 2015 to $60 million. This batch of refunds are funded by part of the $40 million in real property tax anticipation notes received by the government, as announced by the Public Finance Authority on Monday. In July, the Senate had authorized the government to borrow more money against anticipated real property tax revenues, provided that at least $15 million would be used to pay out tax refunds. The notes are purchased by Banco Popular. Senator Kurt Viale proposed an amendment that required the notes to be paid out in 2 years. According to Government House, all undisputed tax refunds for years 2011, 2012, and 2013 have been paid. Tax refunds for tax year 2015 are not due until April 2016. Reporting for News 2, I'm April Knight.
And again, those checks are being sent out by Wednesday. Refunds currently being paid out are for tax year 2014. Turning our attention overseas, the president of Planned Parenthood faced a barrage of questions and criticism from House Republicans on Tuesday as a showdown over the organization's federal funding looms in Washington. Steve Nanitz has the story.
At a House oversight hearing on Tuesday, Republicans told Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards how they felt about federal funding for her organization.
This is an organization that doesn't need federal subsidy.
Take the money from the guys doing the bad things and give it to the ones who aren't.
The hearing comes after the release of a series of edited undercover videos produced by conservative activists that claim to show Planned Parenthood employees negotiating the sale of fetal tissue.
The outrageous accusations leveled against Planned Parenthood based on heavily doctored videos are offensive and categorically untrue.
But some House Republicans aren't buying it, and they're threatening to shut down the federal government. Their odds of succeeding, however, took a big hit when their leader, Speaker John Boehner, announced he was stepping down in October and promised to work with Democrats on a funding bill.
Should we defund Planned Parenthood? Of course we should.
This controversy has made its way from Capitol Hill to the campaign trail, with many Republican candidates expressing outrage and demanding action. But Richards insists that federal funding for her organization is critical to providing necessary health care, especially to lower-income women.
It is impossible for our patients to understand why Congress is once again threatening their ability to go to the health care provider of their choice.
The House is expected to vote on a funding bill on Wednesday. In Washington, I'm Steve Nannis.
And keeping our eye on the economy, global equity markets reached a two-year low on Tuesday. Commodity prices edged up but held near multi-year lows on concern over an economic slowdown in major raw material consumer China. Since the Federal Reserve held U.S. interest rates in check on September 17th, markets have been kept off balance on the timing of a rate hike. Fed officials gave mixed messages on Monday, and investors were looking to a speech from Fed Chair Janet Yellen on Wednesday for more clarity, with the key U.S. payrolls report also due on Friday. Here's the stock market watch. The Dow up 47, NASDAQ down 26, S&P 500 up 2. Coming up on News 2, the DLCA has information for you to avoid some ongoing scams targeting residents in the VI. That's coming up next. Welcome back. As we reported on Monday, the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture and Planning of the 31st Legislature has begun the first in what is intended to be a series of hearings on the impact on the Virgin Islands of the normalization of diplomatic relations between the United States and Cuba. Committee Chair Jeanette Millen Young noted the history of the embargo, which began in January 3rd, 1961. Former delegate to Congress Donna Christensen has warned, while we have looked at this disruption as being far enough into the future to give us time for planning, the speed with which the Obama administration is rolling out new regulations should disabuse us of this assumption. The chief economic policy advisor to the governor, Dr. Simon Jones Hendrickson, said, "The closure of Cuba's market to American tourists was to our advantage. Today we face a scenario that the reopening of Cuba will force us to be more on our P's and Q's in the tourism economic development field." Lisa Hamilton of the U.S. Virgin Islands Hotel and Tourism Association urged that the USVI look for ways to encourage expansion and updating of existing facilities. In other news, recently, law enforcement and regulatory agencies have been busy trying to protect consumers from fraud. There were a number of advisories coming out of those offices, including the VIPD. But a special unit of the police has also been proactive in fraud investigations. News 2's Erica Parsons has that story.
The VIPD's Economic Crimes Unit out of St. Croix is taking the lead on the MoneyGram investigation, and that led them to search businesses and homes belonging to the MoneyGram owners, right now under suspicion of fraud. 6 local MoneyGram outlets across the territory that were shut down last month were just raided by police. 3 St. Thomas locations, 2 St. Croix stores, and 1 St. John outlet were all owned by Alvary Smith and wife Anna Garcia. The 2 are suspected of embezzling $1.4 million from their companies. Police confiscated computers, receipts, and bank statements. They also searched 2 of the pair's homes. They recently bought a $400,000 house in an exclusive area of St. Thomas. MoneyGram corporate first suspended the couple's businesses last month because of the investigation, before terminating the relationship at the end of August. Last week, the VIPD's Economic Crimes Unit also alerted the public to the fact that counterfeit bills have been circulating throughout the territory. They've been discovered in bills $10 and higher. The phony money are actually $1 and $5 bills bleached out and reprinted. The Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs have also issued warnings about a new telephone scam from a fictitious agency called the U.S. Government Reclaim Department, which doesn't exist. The caller pretends that you've been duped out of money from bank fees, and you can get that back if you send a refundable claim fee of $290. And then your money is never seen again. Erica Parsons, News 2.
Now, if you do receive such a call, please don't give out your information, but rather try to get the number they're calling from and report it to Consumer Affairs. Anyone with information about the MoneyGram case or who may have gotten a counterfeit bill, contact the VIPD's Economic Crimes Unit. Meanwhile, officials from the DLCA, they're denouncing statements in a recent online publication that they say are misleading. The VI Free Press published a story on September 22nd regarding 49 Walgreens stores in Missouri. The story talks about the Walgreens store's failure to remove expired sales tags from shelves, which violated a 2014 settlement agreement specifically in Missouri. DLCA officials say the VI Free Press's statement about no immediate comment from the Commissioner of Licensing and Consumer Affairs on the Missouri citation is misleading. The VI has one Walgreens store located in St. Thomas, and no violations of that nature have been discovered. Also, officials said the headline, which read, "Walgreens accused of deceiving consumers," no word from DLCA on local violations, suggests there are violations. The commissioner said while freedom of the press is a constitutional right, that freedom should be practiced responsibly. The VI National Guard is holding officer promotions. Earlier today, Lieutenant Colonel Glenda Matherin Lee was pinned in the B.G. Gerard James Senior Joint Force Headquarters in Estate Bethlehem. Also, Lieutenant Colonel Matherin Lee has 27 years of military service. Currently, Colonel Matherin Lee serves as the Director of Personnel for the VI Air National Guard. Now, on Thursday, October 8th, Lieutenant Colonel Clayton Sutton will be pinned during his promotion ceremony. Currently, Lieutenant Colonel Sutton is employed full-time as the Deputy U.S. Property and Fiscal Officer. Now, on Friday, October 2nd, on St. Croix, Military Training Officer Captain Alfonso E. John will be promoted to the rank of Major at the Brigadier General. The University of the Virgin Islands Music Department will be launching a series of interactive workshops in October and November to help musicians improve their jazz improvisation skills. Now, these workshops are free and open to musicians from high schools, UVI, and adults in the community. Each workshop, they say, is interactive. It begins on Friday at 6 p.m., October 16th. Saxophonist and composer Alfred Chubby Lockhart Jr. will lead that workshop. Lockhart has a wealth of performing experience abroad and locally. The workshop series continues 6 p.m. on Friday, November 13th, with a session on improvisation led by bassist and composer, arranger Marvin O. David and friends. David has had 4 of his compositions recorded by the Howard University Jazz Ensemble. Well, it is time for our hurricane preparedness tips presented by Vitima. Tonight, Director Mona Barnes talks about the roles of Vitima and FEMA. When we hear Vitima, sometimes we hear FEMA. How are they different, and how do you work together?
Well, FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I will tell you, during a significant event, i.e. a hurricane, my hat kind of changed from the Director of Vitima to the Territorial Coordinating Officer. And working with FEMA is there as a resource because we know we are limited in the Virgin Islands as far as resources, and so we continue to sit with Vitima with our plans, our execution, and in an event, they come and they assist us. Pre-hurricane, they will come with their team. They have FCO. I was happy to meet him. He was here last week. Federal Coordinating Officer, as well as Mr. Alex De La Campa, who's the Caribbean Area Division Director for FEMA out of Puerto Rico. And so they come, they sit, they coordinate, and we ensure that any possibility that there is a resource that we might not have, we have that in place. So once the event happens, if we do need to reach out, those plans and everything is already in place. If I may say, just prior to coming to the station, I was able to sit with one of the private companies here in St. Thomas, who is going to be extremely important if we do have a significant event. Because in Puerto Rico, we have what's called a CAD. It's the Caribbean Area Division, but they have an area where they have commodities stocked and ready in an event to send to the Virgin Islands. And so I was able to sit with the shipping company that's going to be part of that process to just ensure what is written on paper actually can happen. And I will tell you, it was a beautiful meeting. I want to say to the people of the Virgin Islands, in a significant event, we are prepared to respond.
Great information there. Now, Bernie continues to track the tropics. He'll have an update on the weather. That's coming up next.